Hello, my name is Quaid McBean, and today I am going to be showing you how to grind reels, grind bed knives, and set the reel and bed knife back up. Today, assisting me, and I will be training her, is my coworker Amy Anderson. Thank you for watching. First thing to do is to take the bed knife off the reel. This is once the reel is taken off the mower and set up on the table. These reels are a set of T-reels for our Toro 3150 mower. Right now I am taking off the two bottom bolts that hold on the bed knife, and secondly I will be taking off the two top nuts that hold on the bed knife. This video is sped up to 2 times fast, so it's not as long. I am using a ratchet 10mm to take these two nuts off. These reels have been on the mower for about 2 weeks now and are due to be sharpened. Sharpening reels cause the reels to be sharp and cause a better quality of cut, and it overall gives you a better product on your greens or tees or fairways, as a better cut is less stress on the plant and will cause less disease, and overall will look a lot better as there's no yellow tops or anything. A dull reel will actually tear the plant or leaf blade, whereas a sharp reel will cut it like papers cut scissors. That's what a reel motion does, is cut grass like scissors in between the reel and the bed knife. Once the reel and bed knife are separated, you are ready to sharpen the reel. I am going to take off the 3 other bed knives, or the 2 other bed knives, for a total of 3 reels. Our triplex has 3 reels, so I will just take off all 3 bed knives at the same time. It makes the process easier once we get into the grinding bed knife and reel process. Before I forget, it's always a good idea to keep all the nuts and washers off your reel in the same spot so they don't get lost during the process. It is just good practice and a good routine to get into every single time. While I'm taking apart the rest of these bed knives, I just want to mention how it is important to check the bearings as well as all the grease fittings when you are taking apart your reels. It's the best time to, as they are up on the bench, and it's an easy check. You check the roller bearings by rolling them around and seeing if there's any play, and you check the barrel of the reel where the knives are, or blades, and give it a shake and spin, and make sure it's a nice clean spin and there's no hopping or anything, and there is no play side to side in the barrel itself. A bad barrel will cause a bad height of or bad quality of cut, and bad roller bearings will drag along the green and cause marks, and you do not want that. Also, you want to make sure you are not sharpening your barrel too little or down too far. Otherwise, that can cause a bad quality of cut too, because it throws the angle of the bed knife and the reel off. The diameter of that barrel itself to Toro spec should not be less than 4.5 inches in total diameter around the reel. That is just something to keep in mind as you are taking apart your reels and grinding them, as over time they do wear down, such as bed knives. Right now I am taking a wire brush to all the bed knives to clear off any debris or grass left on them. So when I go to grind them in the bed knife grinder, none of that falls off in the grinder. Once that is complete, you are ready to take your reel to the reel grinder and start getting it sharpened up and set in the grinder. Before we put the reel in the grinder, we will put the reels to spec for this 3150 Toro reel. Right now I am measuring the spread of 22 inches. This ensures the roller sits on the front cradle even and the clamps hold it down properly. As you can see, I'm doing this with a tape measure, and it is a wing nut on the bottom that I move these front cradle pillars over with. The cheat sheet that I have in front of me has a diagram as I showed with all the measurements on it. The next measurement is the front and back front cradle measurement. This is set to 13, and it is done on each side with a wing nut on the bottom. It is always a good idea to double check all of this once your reel is back and set up in there. The third measurement on the front is the height. This is set to 30. And this is again done with a wing nut and one on the left side and right side of the front cradle. Finally, it is time to move the back roller pad and the rear vise into place before placing the reel in the reel grinder. I lift it into place and set the front roller in the two V's of the front cradle and the rear roller on the back pad. As you can see, I have these two front clamps that pin themselves in and screw down to hold the front roller in place, and the rear vise goes down to hold the rear roller in place. This ensures the reel does not move during the grinding process, as that would cause a very bad grind and not be very good. It is a good idea to grab the reel and just give it a quick shake to check and make sure that it is all tight. Next, I will put the grinder down, and I will show you that on my screen now. So we are going into spin grinding. I slowed this video down a lot so we can see what I am doing. So this is the main screen for the grinder. I hit spin because we are spinning, not doing a relief grind. As you can see, this is kind of the secondary screen. So the next button I will hit will be the up and down arrow next to the rabbit and turtle. This button controls the grinders up and down. So the reason I'm hitting this is because I will lower the grinder, and the rabbit is the fast speed of the grinder up and down, and the turtle is the slow speed. So I will hit the rabbit and go down so that the grinder goes beneath the reel as it is still high from probably the last grind. So you can see I am holding the down arrow, and the reel grinder is going down beneath the reel. Once the grinder is low, I will release the lock button or the lock lever on the bottom to move it freely by hand. I want the grinder to be able to slide left and right freely without hitting the reel. That is why I lowered it. The first tool I will grab is the front adjustment arm, and this goes onto 2 pegs on the bottom of the grinder and locks in place. On top is an AccuGauge gauge that will measure the front and back measurements. This is what sets up the reel to the grinder itself and controls the rack. This grinder, like the bed knife grinder, is fixed on the left side. So I will measure on the left side, then go and measure on the right side and adjust it with the knobs on the right, and then go back and zero it out on the left side. This is necessary because it only moves on one side. Now, sometimes this can be a process, and it can take some time. Lots of back and forth measurements. I line up the AccuGauge gauge with the center of the inside of the barrel, the rod going across. The AccuGauge gauge allows me to measure the distance on each side, and the ideal distance is to get them both to zero out. As you can see that, I'm doing this with the orange dial on the side, and that controls the front and the back. The dial on the top controls the up and down, which we will do next. Now that you can see the AccuGauge gauge is zeroed out, the front and rear, or the front to back setup is good. Now we will move on to the bottom and set up the up and down measurements for the rack. I simply take off the front adjustment tool and move the AccuGauge gauge to the bottom of the grinder, and it is the same process. I line up my AccuGauge gauge with the center bar in the middle of the barrel, and I will zero it out on the left side and measure to the right side. The same process as before, because this machine is still fixed on the left side and adjusts on the right side. I will use the top knob. It is a key to make sure you do not touch the orange knob after the front is set up, as it will cause you to have to reset up the entire reel and start from the beginning. So always remember to grab the top knob to adjust the up and down measurements. Once we are zeroed out, as the screen says, we are good on the top to bottom measurements as well. Now this reel is all set up to the grinder and to the rack and is in spec. Next, I will set up the left and right stoppers for the grinder. These are these little wires with the lights on them. You want to make sure the grinder clears and goes off of the left side of the reel and the right side of the reel. When the light goes on, that is where the transition will be. Next, you want to raise the grinding stone up to the reel, and the goal of this is to make contact with the reel and spin the reel without spinning the grinding wheel and have it hitting. It should be a light tinkle hit. We call it tickling the reel. You want to do this with the left and the right side by raising and lowering it in the turtle speed up and down. Once it sounds consistent on both sides, you move it always to the right side of the machine and move it so the right side light is on and lock it down in place. Lastly, you hook up the spin drive. You do this last because you don't want your fingers in there when the spin drive is on. This is just safety, and that's why it is always done last in case the machine turns on. You move it over by a wing nut and have an extension from the motor going into the reel motor to spin the reel. Lastly, next, you close the doors of the machine, as the machine will not turn on with the door closed or open. So I can go into the main screen and show you how to set up the reel grinder on the screen. As I mentioned before, the reel grinder only works when the door is closed and latched, so that is the first thing I will do before going to the screen. First, I will hit return out of the up and down feed feature, which is in the bottom left of the screen. And now I come to this main page. From here, I will hit the spin grinder, which turns on the grinder. Next, I will hit the vacuum, which sucks up all the grinding dust. And finally, I will turn on the reel spinner, which spins the reel when it's being sharpened. Next, I hit the traverse prox to left, which sends the grinder manually down to the left side. What I am looking for here is a nice even grind, nothing too heavy, even left to right. You can see I upfeed it a little bit because it is a little light and traverse it back to the right. I do this a few times, checking to make sure it is even all across on both sides. Once I am satisfied with that, I will hit the main setup. This goes into 3 values of numbers, the first being how much in-feed per cycle I would like. I always do 0.1, which is 1/1000th of an inch. So for each cycle, it goes up 1/1000th of an inch. So that means we are taking 1/1000th of an inch off the reel itself being ground off. Below that is how many cycles I would like in between infeeds. I usually do 4 cycles. That is 4 times the grinder goes left to right before it goes up another 1/1000th of an inch. And the bottom number is how many full infeeds I want, which is 3. So that is a total of 12 left and right motions and 3/1000ths of an inch. The grinder goes up and takes off the reel. Finally, the spark out and the manual infeed, which is the top value that I'm touching right now, 0.5. That is how many thousandths of an inch, which is 0.5 of an inch. It will go up if I manually infeed it. This is an option in case I am working around the grinder and I feel like it's grinding too light. I can bump it up 0.5 of an inch. And the bottom number 12 there is the spark out, which is basically the cleanup, and that is all done when the grinder is completely done and it does 12 passes to clean up the reel. Where I'm pointing now is all the value numbers, and if those are all correct, I hit accept values where my finger is right now. And once all those are set up and I'm happy with them, I will hit run. And once I hit run, the grinder will start up. And just like that, the grinder starts to go left all by itself. And it will manual, or it will automatically infeed itself and magically go left and right, and it will stop at those transition bars we set earlier with the orange light on them. That is the beauty of these Foley grinders. They are absolutely awesome once they are set up because they take care of everything for you. Finally, once the cycle is done, I will take off the spin reel itself before I put my finger in there to check how sharp it is. That is just a safety issue in case the machine ever turns on. Now that I'm satisfied with that sharpness, I will take off the reel and disassemble it off the rack in the grinder. it is always a good idea to check the sharpness before you do this, in case you need to run another cycle, which can be common sometimes. That way you don't have to reset up the entire reel. Next, I will do a fast pace video of showing how to set up the second reel and sharpen the second reel. And I will put this in fast pace from the other angle so you can see both angles. The setup and process is the exact same as the first go around, it's just from a different angle. Enjoy watching. Now that the second reel is all sharp and done, I will take it out the same as the first time. Thanks for watching part 1 of reel and bed knife grinding. The next video will follow this up and go into the bed knife grinding as well as the bed knife and reel setup. Thanks.